This video is sponsored by Crimson Manifesto, Knuckles OX, Zach Haji, Jopi, and Baba Snake. We return to our heroes as they ascend to a higher plane, quite literally, as Goku, Pigero, King Kai, and the rest of their companions are in the process of boarding an aircraft bound for the Grand Kai's world. An unknown but not altogether long time has passed since the Cell games, with the trio having completed their trip up Snake Way and stopped off at King Yema's place, so that King Kai could request access back to the Grand Kai's world, while Pigero had again played his case for Yema helping him find his parents. While the North Kai has granted his wish to officially have his new fighters ascend, the bearded Oni had been unable to help Pigero, at least at that time, this go round being much kinder on account of his exploits and power level, as it would after all be a likely long and tedious search no matter who did it or how fast they worked. As he learned well last time, the afterlife is a big place, leaving the orphan slightly dejected for the flight over, not even reacting to his companions bickering over who gets the window seat. Finally, after a long flight, the trio arrive on a world very similar to Earth, with a centralized continent in the north, which is where they touch down, as King Kai explains for Goku that this whole area is the estate of the Grand Kai. As promised, there are countless warriors here, with King Kai this time introducing them officially to his stable, which includes a human named Alibu, whom Pigero finds particularly interesting, as well as to his Kai counterparts, with it becoming immediately apparent that the blue catfish deity has a rather bitter rivalry with West Kai, going so far as to immediately order Goku to fight West Kai's star pupil, a green alien named Pikkon, having no time for this high-powered childishness, as it reminds him of his younger charges bickering over a toy. Pigero instead departs to do some digging, since while unlikely, maybe one of the fighters here will know something about his parents. Unfortunately, this quickly proves to be a dead end, as the youngest fighter after he and Goku arrived here 3 generations ago, so there is no chance that anyone here would know about these errant human souls either. That is aside from the Grand Kai, of course, since as a high-level being, he may have some knowledge, or at least the means to track them down. Eagerly, Pigero questions how he can speak with the Grand Kai, though this once again proves to be a somewhat insurmountable barrier, as it seems the only way to receive an audience is through 10,000 years of hard training. Though he doesn't like it, Pigero is not one for complaining, and so sets to work, putting his all into his training in the hopes that perhaps the Grand Kai will notice him among the many who've been here thousands of years longer. And while the deity does not, another does, that being Pikkon, who aside from West Kai, is also hailed as one of the Grand Kai's favorite champions. And so with this insight, the Green Man informs the young human that there is another way in which he could get what he wants, and that is to win the upcoming Otherworld tournament, since the grand prize is a private lesson with the Grand Kai, during which he could freely ask his questions. Naturally, this just sets Pigero to training harder, with Pikkon surprisingly sticking around as a sparring partner and coach, as this boy has impressed him even more than Goku. During a lull in one of their spars, Pigero questions his new mentor on this, feeling comfortable enough to speak candidly with him, as his stoic demeanor and physical resemblance to Master Piccolo put him at ease, with the ancient alien replying that while Goku is stronger, he is blessed with the genes of a warrior race, which will always carry him to impressive heights. In contrast, Pigero has no such advantage, and yet despite this, he has managed to earn commendable strength, even among stronger Otherworld warriors, like Olibu himself and the Saiyan, which is a testament to his willpower and tenacity, 2 traits he admires greatly, as he knows all too well there is always someone out there who will be stronger than even he. However, that is not to say the playing field cannot be leveled, as among his many powers, Pikkon can confirm rumors that the Grand Kai has the ability to allow a fighter to draw out all of their latent potential, which if his read on Pigero is correct, would be substantial in the human's case, more than enough to ensure that by the time he's done the tournament, every soul in Otherworld will know his name. Having 2 particular souls in mind who he'd very much like that to be the case for, Pigero makes a rather reckless decision, stepping away from Pikkon for a moment and marching up to the Grand Kai's even grander mansion, where he bangs on the door and hollers for the deity to come out. At once, the sound of an electric guitar riff sounds behind the orphan, and as he turns to face it, he sees an old being who must be the Grand Kai. Though like with the other Kais, he is not what he would expect of a god, as he grumbles at the kid to keep it down, since he's totally harsh in his vibe, you dig? Unwilling to be deterred, Pigero uses this opportunity while he has the Grand Kai's attention to speak, making his entreaty to have that secret potential unleashing power used on him, since he needs it to find his parents ASAP. Please, he's willing to do whatever it takes. For a moment, the bearded monarch surveys this youth, or at least he appears to, as his sunglasses conceal his eyes, before grinning that he hasn't thought about that ritual in eons, since it was taught to him by an old pal, a real rad daddy-o who had an eye for potential, and an even bigger one for the ladies. Come to think of it, he hasn't seen his pal in a couple of millennium, not since he went off and they appointed that new kid. Not that he's met him either, since from what he's heard, the guy's a real square. By now, Pigero has begun to sweat drop, and so clearing his throat to pull the Grand Kai from his rambling, he asks once more if this means the deity will help him, straightening up with a little shake of his head, since he's guessing that the kid knowing all this means he's earned Pikkon of all people's approval. The Grand Kai agrees that yeah, he'll help him, if Pigero can beat him in a drag race, that is. Though if he doesn't, he's gonna have to pay a penalty, as he is about 10,000 years too early to be asking for favors like this. Still letting passion override common sense as he insists he's in a rush, Pigero then asks what this penalty is, to which the Grand Kai confirms that he's seen Pigero has gotten pretty timid with Pikkon, so if the kid loses, he'll have to join him in being a warden of hell, keeping the no-good nukes from busting out, and helping maintain order. Nodding resolutely, Pigero calls it a deal, stating that if he wins, he'll get the ritual, and if he loses, he'll devote his afterlife to guarding hell, a claim which makes Grand Kai balk, as he replies that he didn't mean the kid had to do it forever, just a couple hundred years, which in turn makes Pigero sweat drop, since as a former street kid, he should have known better than let himself get played like that, though he guesses he's just overexcited at the thought of having a way to get his parents' attention. With the terms of the race settled, Pigero and the Grand Kai then proceed inside the mansion, with the old deity explaining that he knows just the place, leading the way to a set of double doors, which open into what appears to be a vast galaxy of itself. In a tone of awe, Pigero asks just what this place is, to which the Grand Kai answers that it's his rec room. He even has a tournament arena down on the main planet. But right now, all that matters is that big meteor floating in the distance. First one to touch it wins. Okay? Nodding his understanding, Pigero takes his mark. Then as one, he and the Kaioshin take flight. While perhaps not as fast as Goku or Gohan, Pigero is by no means a slouch, and so feels confident in his chances as they pass the opening straight. Though that all changes when he spots the Grand Kai magic speed with him in what appears to be a lazy backstroke across the inky blackness. At the sight of Pigero looking at him though, he decides to get serious, flipping onto his stomach and jetting forward at a speed that makes the human's hair whip around. Suddenly, any chances of victory seem slim to none, as even when Pigero pushes himself to his absolute limit, summoning the Kaioken and everything, the Grand Kai is still faster, with him starting to close into the gold meteor. However, while he may not be the fastest in the room, Pigero is still the craftiest, and so getting an idea, he thrusts out a burst of elemental ki, which he channels as air, with this having the desired effect of acting as a sharp breeze. In zero gravity, even a small gust of air would be enough to send the assorted floating objects flying, meaning that just before Grand Kai can lay a hand on the finish line, it too jets off, bouncing between other asteroids, as Pigero cheekily grins and looks like it's a whole new race. At once, the name of the game has changed, as not only must they reach the meteor first, but also find it amongst his fellows, with it taking a moment to do so in the midst of an asteroid field, as Pigero also cunningly uses fiery ki to make more convincing decoy meteors. Thankfully, having always had sharp eyes honed on spotting social workers amongst crowds of people, Pigero finds the target first, and knowing it can't be long before the Grand Kai does likewise, he dives, taking his cue from the young man, the god that attempts to follow suit. But thanks to his head start, not to mention the fact that he alone actually knows where he is going, Pigero is able to just pull off a victory, as he intentionally flies past the asteroid to make Grand Kai overshoot, before delivering a back kick onto the real space rock, and declaring that he wins. Coming to a stop in midair, the bearded Kai admits that this was some slick strategizing, even if it was some pretty blatant cheating, so he's happy to concede this race, and with it, grant Pigero the awakening he's jonesing for. However, before he does so, he wants to know one thing. Since Pigero must have been aware that he could have gotten this power by doing his 10,000 years of training, why did he feel the need to rush and risk it all? While this is meant as a deep, more rhetorical question intended to make the young human ponder, it seems that he already has an answer, as he states that he doesn't have 10,000 years, since he's got a best friend waiting for him back home, and he's gonna do whatever it takes to get back to him as soon as possible, like he said. Several days have passed since Pigero's race against the Grand Kai, with it at last being time for the Otherworld tournament to begin. As fighters will be representing their quadrants, all participants are assembled accordingly, with this being Goku and Pigero's first reunion since arriving on this world. Letting out a low whistle, Goku smiles that Pigero hasn't been putting this time to waste, has he? Since he's way stronger than he was when they fought Cell. Though grinning as well as much the same can be said, Pigero replies that the Saiyan father figure has no idea, vowing to show him just how far he's come when they meet in the finals, to which Goku nods that he looks forward to it, extending a fist for Pigero to bump as they formally acknowledge each other as both teammates and as rivals. Unfortunately, it seems that Pigero's path to the finals is not to be as trouble-free as he might hope, as after a couple of fairly challenging, but ultimately manageable, matches against fighters like the Insectoid Torby and the human warrior Olibu, Pigero eventually finds himself paired up against none other than his new mentor and training partner Pikkon. Refusing to disrespect the green fighter with anything less than his all, Pigero Pigero leaps right into the transformation he had up until this point kept hidden, the one filled with mystic power that he dubs his ultimate form, as a bright white aura flares into life around him, while his features take on a certain sharpness that makes him look older and far stronger than his years. Nodding approvingly, Pikkon simply replies that he is happy his young friend was able to attain his initial goal. Now he will be honored if Pigero allowed him to help in achieving his second goal, by giving him a fight that none here in the Otherworld will ever forget. At once, Pikkon leaps into action, flying at Pigero and attempting to drive a knee into his temple, which the young man quickly counters, grabbing the extraterrestrial in a leg lock and hurling him face first into the arena floor. For a moment, it actually seems like this might be another speedy knockout from the younger challenger from Earth. Though proving himself far beyond the level of such a defeat, Pikkon wastes no time recovering and launching a fierce ki that causes his aura to burst out like flames that force Pigero to skitter back to the edge of the ring in order to avoid having his legs blown off. As while he does not know what would happen if he took such a wound while dead, he does not want to find out. Spotting how close his young opponent has come to the out of bounds line, Pikkon decides to finish things with a bang, beginning the ornate sequence of motions required for his erroneously named Thunder Flash attack, before subsequently launching a tornado of flames right at Pigero. From the crowd of souls and fighters, a collective gasp goes up, as the human fighter is consumed in flames, with his scream suggesting that he is in the midst of an agonizing immolation. However, Goku alone grins, as he knows this would not be a scream of pain, but one of exertion, with his faith being rewarded when a moment later, Pigero shows the full extent of his pyrokinesis like he control, by condensing the flames around him into an orb which he holds in his hand, none the worse for wear. Then, even more impressively, he flawlessly emulates Pikkon's technique, sending the firestorm right back at his originator with double the power, who is caught by surprise and forced to endure the attack's full potency. Seeing that he truly cannot take this new ultimate Pigero lightly, Pikkon praises the human, stating that he has forced him to fight seriously, a claim he exemplifies with the removal of his weighted gear, each item of which shakes the planet purpose with holding the otherworldly arena as he drops it, while simultaneously this unrestrains his full power, which Pigero can now notice has a similarly mystic quality to his own. Grinning eagerly, Pigero then throws himself at Pikkon, though before he can even get close, Pikkon is upon him, moving so fast that it appears as though there are a half dozen of them, all of whom are laying into Pigero, causing him to spit up, as he is struck from every which way, before being driven into the concrete. However, showing that street kid grit for which he is renowned, Pigero does not go down here, though perhaps it would have been wiser if he had, as when he flies at Pikkon again and strikes him across the chin with a powerful punch, it is met by an even more devastating roundhouse kick, which catches the boy in the stomach and sends him crashing into the bleachers for a simultaneous ring out and knockout. By the time Pigero awakens, the finals are well underway, with the contestants unsurprisingly being Pikkon and Son Goku. While Pikkon is fighting excellently, it is plain to see that he is not in command, as thanks to everything that has been different for this Goku from his Canon counterpart, he has a decisive upper hand, having not only combined Super Saiyan with Kaioken, but seemingly gone beyond it, into that same form that Gohan used to kill Cell. It is an awe-inspiring fight, with Goku's win causing everyone no matter the quadrant they're from to cheer, as it's undeniable that a new Otherworld tournament champion has been crowned, only for the Grand Kai to reveal that early in the match, both Goku and Pikkon touched the ceiling, which is the same as the floor if you're standing on your head, so they're both disqualified. It was a consolation, he'll give them each a private lesson in 200 years. This puts a serious damper on everyone's moods, though none more so than Pigero, as he was already feeling more than a little despondent after his loss. However, before he can sink into melancholy, a woman's voice speaks up, with the young human finding it to belong to a disembodied spirit, who has floated down to speak with him. Not recognizing the voice, Pigero asks who she is and what she wants, with this causing the spirit to grow a bit awkward, as she admits that while he might not remember her, as he was very young when she passed, she's his birth mother. She then begins to hum a small lullaby. Then in the intervening years, Pigero had all but forgotten, though in this moment comes rushing back and proves her claim, as it's that same tune he longed to hear on lonely nights, staring up the moon, before he met Gohan, that is. Though she does not have a body which he can hug, this does not stop the young earthling from trying, as tears run down his face, and he breathes that he's missed her. He's missed her so much. Smile forming in her tone, the spirit replies that she's missed him too. Her son, her grown-up son, so strong and courageous, yet gentle and loving. She's so proud of him. Pigero does not know what to say, though it seems no words are necessary, with the pair simply being together. Finally, after what feels like an eternity, but also not enough time at all, Pigero finds his voice, asking all the questions he'd been craving, with his mother carefully answering each and every one until he reaches the final one. Can he come back with her? Here, Pigero's mother pauses, clearly fighting between what she wants and what is right, before answering that he can. Of course he can, but he shouldn't. His road is not yet over, and there is so much more good that can come from their tragedy. So while the choice is his, she hopes he will keep going and see his adventure through to the true end, while promising that when the day comes to cross over to this side more permanently, she and his father will be waiting for him. Nodding his understanding, Pigero promises to make her and Dad proud, stating that he will go back to the land of the living and finish this journey through life. Though before he does, there's one more bit of business he needs to conclude here in Otherworld. The sound of flames rings throughout the grounds of the Grand Kai's world, as two matching thunder flash attacks meet in midair. Then slowly but surely, one begins pushing the other back further and further, until finally, with a roar like that of a demon beast, the flames consume one of the combatants, knocking him flat on his back. Flying over to check on his beaten rival, Pigero asks Pikkon if he's okay, but the green alien sardonically replying that he'll live, as he takes the man's hand. For that is what Pigero has become in the years since the tournament. A man, fully grown, his frame having filled out, and his hair having gotten rather long from his focus on training. From the sidelines, Goku giggles that this sure was a hoot of a fight, before asking if the pair would be game to team up against him, since while he would never be so arrogant as to say it, his lead over both of them has only widened thanks to his undead body allowing him to train near constantly, and grow far beyond his Canon and even filler counterparts. However, here Pigero declines, as he states that while he will later, this talk of teaming up has made him think of Gohan, who he is ashamed to admit he hasn't checked up on for a while, having done so less and less frequently since settling into his training to be Pikkon. Feeling that it's probably high time to do likewise, the Saiyan agrees to join Pigero in tracking down King Kai, all the while musing with his adopted son that he too wonders what Gohan's been up to these last 7 years. That's part 13. I don't usually do outros in this series, but I thought this one would be fun as an author's note. And really, you only may find it interesting if you want to know more about the creation and brainstorm process that goes into making a good fanfic with rules, as I call What If sometimes. Since that's essentially all Toei was doing when making filler characters and concepts like Pigero and Pikkon. Dragon Ball stuff especially is interesting in this venture, both because the verse and power system makes it very easy to be generic and cookie cutter, but also because fan manga, concepts, OCs, and transformations can vary wildly from really creative and true to form to Toriyama's vision to extremely far off the mark. I have tons of experience doing both by now, so Pigero is always presented an interesting challenge due to my struggling to really think of an original gimmick for him to employ in battle, and also have that inform his character and make his place in the story and as a Z fighter worth it. That's definitely why he has that Gary Stu / Xenoverse creator character vibe to him, where you can probably tell I want to hype him up but can't really think of much and am kind of scrambling to do so. Thankfully, love it or not, the whole elemental key thing works well enough and does have the connection to his orphan status being caused by a natural disaster, and it eventually did lead to the Pikkon connection, which I did think was really fun. But for the benefit of any other storytellers who may want to employ Pigero, or just a character like him / stuff from filler like Zeshin, here are some concepts that I left on the cutting room floor that could work great for your own takes on something like this. Make Pigero a failed partial reincarnation of the original King Piccolo. Junior already has fun set up with this since he's classified as both KP's reincarnation and offspring in an interesting metaphysical way, so it strengthens his and Pigero's bond. Also, if he was 15 in age 761, then he would have been born sometime in 746, not too long before King Piccolo would have been released and defeated in 753. I myself knocked off 3 years of his age to be a tiny bit closer to Gohan's in this story, despite having room to do more or none at all if I really wanted to, so it's not a major logical stretch timeline-wise. And I also can't be the only one who notices how similar Pigero and Piccolo sound as names. Not the exact same thing as the Boo and Oob thing, but it is funny. So in my opinion, that's just the easiest way to justify the whole potential man thing that I did for him here. Another option would be to hold off on doing something like that and still go a similar route to the one I did here, but when you get to the point of Pigero's first death and doing stuff with Zeshin, you could have him work some kind of deal out to serve under King Yima to get his help, allowing you to slightly shift the timeline up and adapt Fusion Reborn in a way that is Pigero instead of the original janitor Oni, who becomes a host of the evil spirits that make up Janemba. That way you give Pigero a gimmick, a power-up, and a really easy way to do an inner demon kind of plot that is established with a well-loved film and villain. That would also feel very in line with the Yu Yu Hakusho vibes of that part of the story. Though I'd certainly say that route would have likely seen me lean harder into the swordsman Pigero route that was touched on with the future design having Gohan's sword and the boys training with Yajirobe. Probably with similar setup to how we did in the filler relay, where Pigero starts using it in the Saiyan saga to cut off Vegeta's tail and decides to just lean into it from there. Another option is also obviously becoming an android, since he has that rivalry with Space Pigero after all. But at the same time, there were earlier drafts of this story where Bun, the other older freedom fighter boy from Zeshin's filler episode, also survived Jiro's experiments and became an android along with Zeshin, with the two completely replacing 18 and 17 in the arc. So in a world where that had come to pass, I could have seen myself having leaned into Pigero's Motorhead status to possibly see him go the similar route. In the end though, much like how I went with Avatar Pigero, battle gimmicks in Dragon Ball can serve much more as garnish in a fight than the actual food. At least sometimes in my opinion. And beyond that, I do still have an idea to incorporate all the groundwork I've laid already into something pretty cool and cohesive that I'm really excited to get to around the time we start adapting stuff like superhero. So as always, take care of yourselves and the world around you, have a nice day, go beyond plus ultra, and I'll see you guys next time.